Good morning on this Sunday, December 22nd, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Georgia's congressional delegation votes along party lines on the impeachment of President Donald Trump. A jury finds the former Atlanta mayor's press secretary guilty of violating the state's open records law. And autopsy results on 2 inmates at the Cobb County jail show they died of natural causes. Kathy Rollard is in for Theron. Phil and Janelle are back. Alexis is here. The debate and discussion begin right now. Well, 9 Georgia Republicans voted no, 5 Georgia Democrats voted yes on impeachment. No real surprises, but surely this will be the vote that could have a huge impact on the 2020 races. And Phil, welcome back.
Thank you.
Let's go right to the 6th congressional district. Congresswoman McBath really didn't speak during the debate. She voted no, and her Republican opponent Karen Handel wasted no time making sure to put this vote front and center in the district. Now, in your opinion, does this hurt McBath's chances of re-election?
I think so. Remember, she was trying to portray herself after she had beaten Karen Handel as more of a moderate and centrist that would listen to all sides, and then that has turned out to be just a lie. And so she spoke out originally on the impeachment proceedings, and then she went ahead and did this. So I think that she's in trouble with her re-election.
But Kathy, you know, a lot of the pundits have said this is where Trump is weak among the white suburban Republican women. So, you know, what is your take on this 6th congressional district? Because a lot of eyes will be watching this race.
I think she's handled this like a champ. She's been very measured in her public statements regarding this. I don't think anybody should be surprised that she would vote for the impeachment. I think it was justified, but we won't go there. But I do think that she's handled this well. And you know, the thing I've been impressed with Representative McBath is that she has really been somebody, and I just know this from personal experience, that has reached out to people, that has surprised people with phone calls and other communications that maybe they weren't expected. And honestly, for somebody who, you know, ascended to Congress without having been in public office before, I think she's done a remarkable job. And I think it'll be a tough race just because of the numbers, but I think she'll be fine.
It's one of the most competitive races in the nation.
Yeah, so now, what's your take on this, and what do you think Karen Handel's strategy should be?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, for someone who lives in the 6th district, you know, Lucy McBath said that she was running on a bipartisan ticket, so to speak, when she ran the first time, that she was going to work across the aisles, and I didn't see any of that. I haven't seen any of that. Yes, I'm not surprised that she voted with the Democrats, but I do feel like this opens the door up for Karen Handel to come on in. We have to remember, she only lost the district by 16 votes per precinct. So that means, and then it was during a historical year when we had Stacey Abrams on the ballot, but now we have President Trump on the ballot. So it's going to kind of flip in the favor of the Republicans naturally. So I just feel like this is definitely going to, I believe the vote sealed her fate to a certain degree. And I feel like it was written all over her face. It didn't seem like she wanted to vote, period.
Well, I think she didn't want to vote. Nobody wanted to vote. Nobody got elected to go impeach a president. I think it was a serious, somber time and a decision that she made based on the facts at hand that were presented during that hearing. But I think that she still has a strong chance to win because of her other stances, particularly that on gun control and gun safety.
Well, I don't think gun control is something that resonates in the 6th district. Again, as a resident of the 6th district and knowing a lot of people that are in that area, gun control is not something that we're talking about. But to your point, you know, even though she's a Democrat, it doesn't mean that you have to vote lockstep with all of the other Democrats. And I think that a lot of these elected officials didn't look at their districts, they didn't look at the statistics and to see exactly how this was going to affect their elections.
So sometimes you have to vote your conscience and not what's your district.
And a lot of Democrats said that as well. And so, Phil, to that point, you do have some poll numbers from Matt Towery. It's good to see our former pollster here, Matt Towery, kind of back in putting his kind of touch back in the polling ring again. What do you got there in terms of numbers?
Well, you know, 5 weeks ago, as you may remember, the AJC and the University of Georgia did their poll, and there's a lot of criticism, including from me, how they used registered voters as opposed to likely voters. That's a completely rookie mistake that pollsters shouldn't do. So Matt did one last weekend, And it was 1,000 likely voters. They were surveyed by both automated and live interviews, including some cell phones.
Was this in Georgia?
It was in Georgia only. And so he did the Trump job performance. And of course, this is going to be critical to what we're talking about in terms of turnout in the elections in 2020. And so it's a complete flip from 5 weeks ago. And so what Matt found was the approval, the Trump job performance approval is 52%. And the disapproval is 42%. What about impeachment? Only 13% supported impeachment. There was 33% that supported removal, but who opposed impeachment? A solid 50%. Again, this is a complete change from 5 weeks ago. So this shows, again, you talk about the 6th district. I think that, yeah, you'll have some turnout there. And I think that basically Trump won by 5 points last time. If I had to look in the crystal ball now, especially with this completely partisan impeachment, I think that the president's very good shape right now.
So, Kathy, how are Democrats going to balance this? You know, you've got a great economy, you've got great unemployment numbers. You know, it's all about the economy in so many facets and job numbers versus, you know, President Trump and the impeachment. Like, how do you balance this messaging heading into an election year?
Well, it's going to be tough because we don't know what's going to happen in the year to come. And I think it's a year where there's going to be a lot of gas on the fire. And we have a president who is prone to outrageous statements, outrageous behavior, and I think that's only going to continue as we go into the coming year. We don't know how the Senate is going to play out with the impeachment trial, if one's even going to happen. I suspect one will, but there's a lot in question. The thing we do know is Georgia is split right in half. And so we'll talk about some things about, you know, voters, voter suppression, that kind of thing. Every single vote in this state will count this year because we are that close.
What voter suppression?
I know.
We'll get to that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Including purging, but we'll get to that. Yeah.
Legal
coming up.
purging.
Legal
On,
purging.
on the impeachment front, I do want to mention Congressman Doug Collins because he has been front and center the past few weeks. Phil, how do you think this will play in his decision? He still says, you know, he hasn't made his mind up on whether or not he will enter the race. But surely with him being so kind of, you know, the star for Republicans on the impeachment front, what do you think about that?
Well, he is the star. He did a great job as an advocate for the president in the whole rigged trial or the rigged hearings. However, you're making a good point. We've got from now till March. March is when we'll probably be seeing qualifying for that 2020 U.S. Senate seat that Kelly Loeffler is going to assume on January 1st. So I would probably think that his popularity ratings are high, but Kelly Loeffler was just named to some very important committees, agriculture and VAs, which Johnny Isaacson had. She'll be taking some votes that I think the Republicans and conservatives and a lot of independents are going to love. So ask me that question in early March.
But you know, to that point too, I'm interested in hearing, you know, maybe her speech when it comes to President Trump and if it gets to this impeachment trial and seeing how impassioned she is when it comes to what she says will be a no vote on impeachment.
Absolutely.
I guess removal from office.
Yeah, I suspect that it wouldn't be as when you say passionate, because she is soft-spoken, as she stated herself. But I do believe that she is going to continue to say what she's been saying all along, that she is not in support of this impeachment sham, that she is totally behind the president, and that she's going to vote with the Senate, the Republican Senate.
It'll be a true test.
It will be a test, but she's, you know, I take her at her word. She said she will not support the removal of the president.
Okay. Well, coming up, the first person criminally charged with violating Georgia's open records law is found guilty. We'll discuss straight ahead. A Fulton County jury found Jenna Garland guilty of violating the state's open records law. The press secretary to former Mayor Kasim Reed says she'll appeal the verdict. Now, Kathy, she won't serve jail time, and I think she shouldn't. But really, this gives a message to public information officers whose job it is to provide information to the public. And sometimes I think those members of the public can't really afford lawyers to fight for information in court, like we saw, you know, in this case play out. But I think this sends a clear message that in terms of public information requests, it's imperative that the public deserves the information that is requested.
That's right, and it's not a surprise. Any kind of communications employee in an administration understands that that's their job. That's a huge part of their job, and it's not fun. It can be tedious. People can be annoying, but that is your job. And so, the text message she sent sort of, were the proof in the pudding, if you will. I think she'd make a terrible mistake to appeal this. I don't see any way that she wins on appeal, and, frankly, why would one want to make oneself so miserable by sitting through more months of this kind of discussion?
$750 fines for both counts, misdemeanor charges.
Yeah, it's not a felony, so she's not marked that way, but it is too bad that your text messages are, subject to public scrutiny because you don't think of them as being that. Even if you feel that way, sometimes you feel like you don't want to cooperate, but you do because that's your job. And unfortunately, they were used against her.
I think there was this feeling, Phil, under this administration that a public information officer, and really sometimes, in politics, that your job is to protect your boss, right?
Well, you do protect your boss, but you don't break the law and you don't lie. And also, I don't know if I was offered a job as a press secretary in the midst of a culture of corruption that has been occurring in that Kasim Reed City Hall, I wouldn't take the job. And so I don't think fully she knew what her job was, to your point. And I think she said she loved the mayor and wanted to protect him. I think she got off light.
Well, we do have the journalistic backgrounds. So, this is really important and a lot of times personal to us because we filed so many open records requests and a lot of times we're fought.
And I think the listeners ought to know what those texts said was delay, let's not help them.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to the basis of what she was hiding. What she was hiding or attempting to hide was the fact that council members, the mayor, and the mayor's brother had not been paying their water bills, including the current mayor. That's absolutely inexcusable. The public has a right to know that and put a stop to it.
Yeah, and I've said it a bunch of times on the show. I don't understand why Mayor Bottoms is not just doing an overhaul and just getting rid of everyone who is connected to the previous administration. I think it's just really ridiculous, to be honest, to continue to do this.
Well, I will say, she does have the open checkbook and she has opened up the government. Probably not as open as you would like it, but I will. I'm not playing the part of Theron Johnson.
My writers have been blocked. We had to go to the Attorney General twice to try to get an article in James Magazine to get the information. And also the open check policy. Let's clear this up. It may have your name on the open check policy, but the money may be going over to you that we have to find out and never know. So it's kind of a charade there.
All right. Good to point out.
Good.
All right. Well, moving on, after months in the making, the ATL approved its $27 billion transit plan. Chairman Charlie Sutliff calling it a watershed moment for the region. And coming up, the plan was a major undertaking, a major accomplishment. Now, how to pay for it. Will we see state funding allocated for transit despite the budget cuts this year? Kathy, transit's, I know, a major issue for you.
Yeah, don't make me lose my mind before the end of the year. Let's just try to focus here. I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to move some things. What is of concern to me is that transit is not first and foremost part of the discussion. You cannot move large numbers of people by having them sit in the same traffic that cars are in. People aren't going to ride buses if they're stuck in that same traffic. You've got to have dedicated lines and lanes that people can get into. And because we have dithered for the last 40 years about 50 years to adding to our transit system, we are stuck where we're stuck. I tried to get my hair cut yesterday and spent 50 minutes trying to get out of a parking lot to go basically across the street, which I would have, because I had to move my car out of the booting parking lot. And it's because everybody's in a single family car in Buckhead trying to get where they need to go at the same time. We have to have better alternatives to that. And I'll be writing Marta to get to that haircut in the future.
I think you make a really good point. And Alexis, let me ask you, because I think people, when you say we want transit. They want transit, and they think of transit as MARTA, right? But then you ask them, and they don't want to pay for it, and they think, well, it's not, it's too expensive. It won't be done immediately. So it's kind of a catch-22.
Yeah, if you don't do it now, it won't get done. And 20 years from now, when the system gets built out or whatever it is. But I think the problem is people have to make that commitment to transit. In the South, traditionally, we've been a car town, in Atlanta. Everybody has their own car. That's been the American dream, is to get your car. But I think we have to change that now because there's so many people who are in Metro Atlanta now. You really do need to go with that public transit.
I think everyone would agree with that. The problem is, and you go back to last March when you had the Gwinnett County fiasco, people want to know, how is this going to deal with congestion in my neighborhood? Absolutely. And you have to, and heavy rail is very expensive, and if you're going to tax people, they want to know exactly how this is going to work. And so that lost by 8 points, as you well remember, Lori. And so I think we're all making good points here, but it comes down to what's going to help me in my particular area.
And I think the fact that they came up with a list, that they have a plan, that they will take it to the legislature is a major accomplishment.
That is a major accomplishment.
And to get some state funding will be major as well.
Yes, it would be. Well, an update coming up on controversies surrounding the Cobb County Jail. Stay tuned. Cobb County Sheriff Neil Warren has come under fire for conditions at the Cobb County Jail after it was reported 7 inmates died while in custody. This week, autopsies showed that 2 of those inmates died from natural causes. Phil, I want to turn to you because we had some debate about this last week. Just kind of get your thoughts on kind of what's going on, the politics surrounding all of this as well.
Well, the politics are very important in Cobb County because it's a pivotal county when we're talking about the 2020 elections, and they're having key local elections there too, including Sheriff Warren, who's up for re-election. Jails are not really good, nice places. I've toured a lot of jails in the last few years here in Georgia. Unfortunately, people die. In this case, you had natural deaths, cirrhosis of the liver. You had 1 suicide. This is 7 during the year. You walk into a jail, and there's some horrible conditions. I'm sorry, but you have fecal matter that being thrown at guards. You have filthy conditions that have to be cleaned up every day. It is tough being a guard. It is tough being a sheriff anywhere, whether it's Georgia or in this country. So I'm very sympathetic to what's trying to be done. I think Sheriff Warren is committed to cleaning it up and to doing better. One was a suicide who was known as suicidal. There's a lot that there's just not you can do.
Yeah. There's a lot. I think it's a complicated issue. There's a lot that comes into it. I think a lot more information has to come out.
Absolutely.
Before making a decision.
I agree.
All right. Well, a federal judge gives the okay for Georgia to remove hundreds of thousands of inactive voters from the rolls after those voters failed to participate in several elections. They were notified by mail, a move that was added into state law. Kathy, you kind of brought up voter suppression earlier in the show. Do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, well, I think this judge is really trying hard to be fair to all parties. I think, one of the things that happened yesterday was that the Secretary of State's office realized that they had purged 22,000 voters by incorrectly interpreting the state law. And so those 22,000 voters will have an opportunity to get themselves reactivated. But I give, hats off to Fair Fight Action and Stacey Abrams' group because, having that challenge every step of the way, I think is a really important thing. And every single person who gets their right to vote restored is important in an election.
Now, Kathy, you're distorting this. The Secretary, Brad Raffensperger, did this as a policy decision. It was a close call on those 22,000. He could have just said, let's go ahead. This suppression is a myth.
That's not true. He said himself that
he said if we're going to err, we'll, okay.
He restored them based on information he received from Fair Fight Action about their
But he didn't have to, but he
inaccuracies.
did the right thing. I'm praising him for that. But this is a myth about suppression, and I'm tired of Stacey Abrams and some of her acolytes saying this. This is done by federal law. We have to follow the law here, and if you don't vote in these cycles and you're warned, you're given warnings in this state. It's not like you're just willy-nilly being thrown off. I just think people need to realize that there are other issues that Stacey Abrams can talk about, but this really isn't one.
Yeah. I mean, we have to say, too, that whenever we are purging the voter rolls, it's not in favor of just one particular party. It's in favor of the whole voting process. You know, it's to make it fair and to make sure that all of our information is being disseminated accurately.
But the rule that use it or lose it is something that needs to be revisited. Just because you don't vote doesn't mean you should be removed from the voter rolls.
Well, if you don't vote since 2012, and here we are in 2019, and I mean, that's just kind
And
of
the law was
ridiculous.
changed that you do get a mailing, and if you don't respond
That's
to the
right.
mailing, then you are purged.
And the whole point is
I mean,
this
at
is
some
an
point you
anti.
do have to take personal
It's an
responsibility.
anti-fraud. It's
Well,
an
if you just show up-
anti-fraud
if you're-
device.
If you're registered to vote and you come up to vote, then you should be able to vote.
That's right.
You can't, but you can. No one's stopping
absolutely.
you.
This
But
is not
if you're being
impacting that.
purged, you can't.
Well, if
But
you're being
you were
purged.
warned. You were warned, and they may have moved. Most of these people have moved away.
Right.
Or had
That's
died.
not necessarily
Some of
true.
them had
Well,
died.
that's what the
First
office
of all,
says.
when people die, the Social Security office gets immediate notification, which then goes out to governments, and that. Having just been through this with my father, I know this
But
to
a lot
be
of
true.
these people have moved, Kathy.
Well, if they've moved, there's change of address. There's the post office does updates regularly that people with databases compare to. So that is not difficult and could be handled.
So you're
on
in
a
favor of
regular
keeping all
basis.
these people on the rolls, which is
I am if
completely
they just haven't
inaccurate.
voted
And
for 10 or
But I
12
also feel like a
years.
lot of the things you just listed are things that you have to take personal responsibility in order to put in place, as far as notifying when you move and things of that nature. So if personal responsibility is important when it comes to that aspect of it, then personal responsibility is important when it comes to responding to the mailers that come to you that says, "Are you still going to vote? Do you still live here?"
I have to do it when I drive, for my driver's license,
Yeah.
so I don't think it was an extra
Right.
step to do it when you register to vote.
Absolutely.
So,
Wow.
one more
Okay,
issue I
go
want to get to. Abby Winters is charged with simple battery and disorderly conduct. She's the wife of a Chattooga County Commissioner, Jason Winters, and she allegedly poured a soda on a reporter, Casey Bryant. I mean, can't get open records, and now you get soda
We
poured
have
on your head.
bipartisan agreement that
I-
that was
I-
an egregious
It
activity.
was terrible.
I think, and just a word on Cassie Bryant, the journalist that was covering. She did not do anything that would have merited this. Nothing merits an assault.
No.
And so I think it's an outrage. And the fact that now the lawyer for the wife of this commissioner, the sole commissioner, is claiming that she tripped. She's not even apologized. Hey, it's the Christmas season. Why don't you apologize to the
And
journalist?
move on.
I know, and just
Gosh,
let it go.
that was horrible, horrible. Anyway, we will have winners and losers, speaking of losers, coming up. Stay tuned, everyone. We're back with winners and losers, and today we'll start with Alexis.
Okay, I want to share this. The Atlanta History Center bought this flag, which was from the Civil War, that represented the colored troops who fought for the Union. And it's a wonderful addition to the collection there at the History Center, so y'all should go check it out.
Wow.
I also want to congratulate the High Museum. They had a wonderful program this past week on music inspired by Romare Bearden, which is an exhibit that they have going on right now. Everybody should go see it. It's on until February. And then I want to tell everybody Merry Christmas. And Happy Hanukkah, too.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to definitely give a shout out to the Jekyll Island Resort Club. That's where we were for my birthday for the last week, and it was just so awesome. I love the location, and we have to highlight a lot of these places that are in Georgia. Also, congratulations to Sheriff Maddox. I know we mentioned her again in DeKalb County. She made history by being elected as the first woman sheriff. I got a call from my good friend Eric Moore, who works with the sheriff department. He was ecstatic about it, so I said I would definitely mention it. Also, Senator Perdue passed along with Senator Cotton with Arkansas, but introduced a bill imposing sanctions on the drug cartel. I thought that's something big. They didn't get a lot of media press about it, but I thought that was awesome. And lastly, prayers for Senator Greg Kurt, as well as he is in hospice. So
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yes, lots of prayers going out to him and his family.
absolutely.
Phil.
Well, yeah, Christmas is a winner, and Happy Hanukkah. I'll second that motion. I do have a winner, our next U.S. Senator, Kelly Loeffler. She is now on a speaking tour, a media tour. She's been making countless phone calls, calling leaders all around the state and potential donors, of course. And I think she'll be sworn in probably January 2nd or 3rd. They're still trying to figure that out. You know, the loser, you remember the proposed city for East Cobb? They actually, the co-chair chairs said, gosh, we better maybe regroup, throw in the towel, whatever you want to say, and let's have another year to try to convince people that this is a really good idea. They did have a very good feasibility study that they did earlier this year, but I think it's a mistake. They probably should have gone ahead and tried to convince taxpayers why this is a good idea. So that was a loser for no.
They had a lot of momentum in the beginning, and then it just kind of fizzled.
They did, yeah.
And there's been a really successful
I don't
push
think they
for
fully
cityhood.
understood that they have to keep this going and have social media and have more town meetings.
Do you think it's because it's Cobb County, and we've seen the cityhood pushes into Cab and Fulton more?
I just think it was mishandled in terms of trying to get out there and explaining why this is good and compare it to other cities that have had a good experience.
All right.
Sandy Springs.
Maybe they just want less bureaucracy.
Well, that was one of the arguments. That was one of the arguments. But that should have been countered effectively.
All right. And Kathy?
Well, I want to say I, for one, am happy to put 2019 to bed, and I'm looking forward to a Democrat-led 2020. We'll see what happens. I just want to, the loser for me is the Public Service Commission and Georgia consumers. I think the Grinch played out in terms of giving a giant rate increase to Georgia Power. It's going to average about $200 per household increase in your electric bill, and also to AGL getting a gas price increase. The middle class and poor people in this state are struggling enough as it is, and that's a lot of money.
It is.
That is a big raise, and so I think they're the Grinch this year. And I'd give a shout out to the Carrie Steele Pitts Home. That's my favorite charity. They're a children's home in Southwest Atlanta that's been around for 131 years consecutively, and they are doing a wonderful job for kids who need them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm going to give a shout out to my favorite charity, Sunshine on a Rainy Day. They do room and home makeovers for kids with terminal illnesses, chronic illnesses. They do a wonderful job. They hit their 100th makeover this year. And also, Georgia's unemployment rate hits a record historic low of 3.3%. So congratulations. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy Hanukkah. And we will see you back here next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.